WQAD News 8, this is WQAD This Week.
Good morning. It's Sunday, January 1st, 2023. Happy New Year, and thank you for joining us for News 8 This Week. I'm John Diaz. As we step into 2023, we are taking a look back, one last look back, at some of our favorite stories of 2022. A few months ago, News 8's Josh Lamberty told us about a library in downtown Burlington that's doing something different. In a moment, we'll sit down with Josh to get some insight into his report, but first, he shows us how Burlington's library experience is unique.
Cities by nature can often be loud. A place in downtown Burlington fits right in. This is Allison Richards' normal.
If we had had this library when I was a child or when I was in high school or college, I absolutely would have been a library user.
A library with resources like these.
In the bag we have communication card.
These sensory kits are now available to check out,
So again, libraries are not quiet.
giving those with sensory disabilities
This is not
something
quiet.
for them.
But it's a fun little fidget toy.
We're part of the greater story of libraries shifting to a human-centered model.
Director Brittany Jacobs is helping write that next chapter.
The sensory certification includes kids who are on the spectrum, but it goes way beyond that. It also incorporates people who have PTSD or any other kind of sensory processing disorder. We don't want to just be shooting darts in the dark and hoping that something sticks.
So we have our headphone zone sign here, so when they come around the corner, they know there's going to be some
A southeastern Iowa first.
sensory, possibly overload. So if they want to put their headphones on, this is a good time to do it. Again,
It's also a sign of changing times.
and this is an area of the library that's tucked away a little bit that happens to be a little bit more muffled and quiet.
A resource.
And we were looking at demographic data, but we weren't seeing those people, those kids or their families in the library.
Binding the community together.
Libraries carry the stigma of becoming irrelevant, and we're also fighting the stereotype of what a traditional library is.
Libraries are places that often are silent.
If you go into most public libraries these days, you'll notice a shift. It won't be quiet.
In Burlington, staff are quietly making their own noise.
Josh Lamberty joins us now. Josh, very interesting report. I want to kind of first start with the certification that you mentioned in the story. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this is the sensory inclusion certification from an organization called Culture City. And they have folks and organizations that are certified from really around the country, around the world, that have all gone through this same certification process. And really it's kind of a three-pronged approach. There's signage that's put up within the organization, so in this case, within the Burlington Library. There's those sensory kits that we mentioned in the story that kind of help engage people with sensory disabilities. And there's also a staff training component. So all of the staff within the Burlington Library went through an inclusion training to kind of get everybody up to speed and on the same page, so that when they do have folks that come in to utilize their space, everybody is on the same wavelength, so to speak.
Sure, and as we said, this is unique in that there are only two
Correct.
Libraries like this in the state of Iowa.
Libraries, correct.
Right.
There are others in the state of Iowa, other places like Blank Park Zoo in Des Moines. I believe there's 8 organizations in Iowa that hold the certification. There's 4 in Illinois, and fun fact, Wrigley Field is one of those in Illinois that has the same certification. So it really isn't just about smaller organizations. I mean, big organizations too are taking advantage of this.
And how did it what was the genesis of it here in Iowa for this library?
Yeah, so in Burlington, Allison that you met in the story, she actually was working in a school with special education students and was realizing that they were using those fidgets that we saw and certain tools and the communication cards that they now have in their sensory kits at the library. Those similar items they were using at school every day. This was something familiar for these students. they weren't seeing that outside of the classroom, right? So there's a consistency piece that's important for people with sensory disabilities, and to provide that consistency throughout the day is important. And I should note, this is not just for people on the autism spectrum, right? This is for anybody with any sort of sensory disability. That could be somebody who has PTSD, somebody who may be struggling with dementia, even a stroke patient who, you know, might just have a little bit of sensory, need a little bit of extra help. This is all to support them and give them the best experience possible. So it all really started in the classroom, and then when Allison came to work at the library and noticed that there was kind of this void with the director, Brittany, it just kind of blossomed from there. And what could they do to best reach another population that, frankly, isn't talked about enough?
And this is just the beginning for the Burlington Library. They have other things planned as
They
well.
do. So within the next couple of years, they're looking at kind of a redesign of their library space inside. The library really hasn't been touched or redesigned since they really opened at their new space in downtown. So what they're looking to do here is rethink what a library looks like, what a library sounds like. Where should certain things be placed in a library to best meet the customer's needs? Should the computer labs in a 21st century library be located all the way back in the back corner of a library tucked away? Brittany and other library staff argue maybe not. When you walk into this library in Burlington, you're going to notice it's not dead silent like we normally think libraries are. So they're really trying to think of unique ways to kind of keep pushing the boundaries of a library, because they're really communication centers now. They're not just places filled with books. They're places where people come to be themselves, and they're trying to really embrace that.
Yeah, and we certainly want to get more people and kids, especially, into those spaces. All right, Josh, thanks for joining us this morning.
You bet.
And after the break, we continue our look back with a report from Williamsport, Pennsylvania for the Little League World Series and a conversation with News 8's Corey Kuffler when News 8 This Week continues.